Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to our Saturday video here in Warships. We're going to be doing an upgrade and commander build video today on the Tier 10 American Battleship, the Vermont. So, let's get right into it. So first off, we need to discuss what type of battleship is the Vermont. Is she a brawler? Is she like mid-range fighter or long-range sniper? Vermont is a mid-range to long-range type of battleship. Naturally, the closer you can get, the more accurate these 12 457mm guns become. But if you overextend because of her slow speed, you can quickly find yourself being overrun by the enemy team and a little bit harder to dodge torpedoes because you are a bit of a thick boy here in the Vermont. So mid to long range is the type of battleship I would play Vermont as. Now, when I say mid-range, I'm saying like, let's say 13, normally I think 12 to 15 kilometers is kind of more the mid-range. So I try to keep outside secondary range of like brawling battleships that might be like 12 plus kilometer. So like, 14, 15 and so forth. So, all right, let's see here. What do we have going on with the armor layout? So you have a 32mm forend plating. The aft end is also 32mm. You do get a bit of a additional protection to your aft end armor belt. I've actually been hit with a shell in the rear of the ship because this is like kind of the rudder you're seeing down here, where I've had my rudder incapacitated playing Vermont. So that's kind of interesting because it's rather large, but it's interesting they had this 292mm aft end armor belt here. So if someone's trying to aim low Citadel or something, which your Citadel doesn't even go back here, you have some additional protection. The side plating is you have this torpedo protection, 38mm, and then you have this additional plating up here that's a 51mm that also goes into your deck plating. So you're resistant to some HE spam, the larger HE shells, maybe like something like Thunder or Conqueror, or let's say something like Wooster with IFHE. I believe you're going to be having more of a difficult time with in dealing because you also have this large 19mm plating superstructure. So if I take away that torpedo protection, what do you have? You have a 406mm armor belt, and we still have that 51mm up top. And then you have the torpedo bulkhead for the Citadel armor. We'll take more things away. We'll take away this deck, which is another deck, part of that 406mm casemate armor, 127mm on top. Getting us finally down to the Citadel, again with that 41mm bulkhead plating going on, but 406mm. So this Citadel is above waterline. As you can see, it comes up just slightly. It's pretty long Citadel naturally because of it needs to go all the way to your forward main battery turret in the front and your rear main battery turret. So you have to be mindful in giving broadside in this ship. You normally want to be angled. It's kind of hard somewhat to angle in this ship because she's rather round. So you can think you're angled, but you can still, just because of how round she is, still take more damage than what you think you should. So that's just something you just have to be mindful when you're playing the Vermont. So let's talk about the modules. So we have 457mm guns, these same guns you find on the Ohio. Slightly, ever so slightly different, but mostly they're the same. You have a 40-second reload time, 180-degree turn time of 31.3 seconds, how we have the build right now. Maximum HE shell damage, 6,450, and maximum AP shell damage, 15,750, which is quite hefty. You have no further upgrades for any of these modules, so what you see is what you get in terms of modules. So your hull, you have 102,800 hit points, with armor varying from the 19 to the 508mm. You have 8 secondary turrets, and these should probably be the traditional 127mm, which they are. So you could buff these out slightly, but this is by no means a secondary brawler battleship, just to be clear. And you have 65 AA mounts. Your AA on Vermont is rather ridiculous, 89 rating already right now. We'll talk about that more in due order. Your gun fire control system, you have 24.5 kilometer range with the build I have right now here on Vermont. So you're not always needing that spotter plane unless you spot that enemy battleship who might be a longer distance away, but your penetration capacity, if he's not showing you broadside, is the reality. You're just going to be bouncing shells off of his deck. Propulsion, you are 23 knots. I like running the Ergonomic combat signal. This increases your ship speed by plus 5%. This gets us up to 24.2 knots. So I do recommend running Ergonomic on Vermont just to help you get around. I know some people even run brisk, and we can talk about that on the commander here shortly. In terms of her upgrades, I am first and foremost running the main armaments modification. Your risk of your main battery becoming incapacitated, negative 20%, main battery survivability, plus 50%, and main battery repair time, if your main battery should become incapacitated, is negative 20%. I've not had the experience yet of my guns getting knocked out, but because, well, actually, no, I take that back. I've had it knocked out twice that I can remember in the past battles I've played. So because these guns have such a long reload time, it's nice to be able to have some protection because these guns are really your bread and butter. Like this ship revolves around its main gun, so you really want to keep those in line. You have Auxiliary Armaments Modification 1. You typically see this more on a brawling battleship build because it increases your survivability of your secondaries, but also your AA. So I don't run that on Vermont. I don't recommend it. You also have Magazine Modification 1, which completely eliminates the risk of your ship's magazine detonating. But I'm going to recommend you run the Juliet Charlie Combat Signal, which completely eliminates the risk of your ship's magazine detonating. Did I say that for this? It's 70%. Negative 70% with this one, 100% with the Combat Signal. So this is the route you want to go here on Vermont because you don't want to detonate. You don't want the fun to be ruined. So you don't need this. And I'm not going to really talk about either of these two. For the second slot, I run the Damage Control System Modification Run. Risk of catching fire, negative 5%. Risk of flooding. The reality is, again, you are a very large ship, so anything to kind of reduce the HE spam that will be thrown at your way, decrease the chance of setting on fire, in my book, is welcomed. Injury and protection. This may have helped to decrease the chance of my steering gear getting knocked out from an enemy battleship volley, which didn't do much damage to me. But I still lean towards the Damage Control System Modification 1. You also have Defensive AA Fire Modification 1. This is a AA modification. Increases your action time of your Defensive AA and decreases the cooldown. I don't see the need for this if you are intending to be out on the flank by yourself and maybe you're divvied up with a CV teammate, and then maybe there's more use for this because the CV might focus you if you're alone by the flank, but I don't see need for it when I know there's always going to be HE spam in the game. For the third slot, I take the Main Battery Modification 2. This increases my main battery traverse speed by plus 15%. So this is welcomed in my opinion, and that's what's helping us get to that 31.3 second 180 degree turn time. Because at times you're going to have to be maneuvering and disengaging and from a flank, and that means maybe you're shifting your guns to the opposite side of the ship. So in my book, very welcomed. I don't recommend Secondary Battery Modification 1. I don't recommend AA Gun Modification 1. Artillery Plotting Room Modification 1. This extends your main battery firing range by plus 16%, and you get a buff to your secondaries as well. But I mean, stock, you already have 24.5 kilometer, and you have access to a spotter plane. Why would you want to be firing Vermont shells regularly over 24.5 kilometers? The only reason I could see this being is maybe for something like you're sniping a CV at the start of a battle, but you have spotter plane, and secondly, most CVs, when you spot them in the early part of the battle, they're just nosing towards your flank, and Vermont shells don't have the penetration capacity to even bust through the flight deck of the tier 10 CVs and super CVs you'll find only unless you get the broadside, but you have that spotter plane to help you in those situations. So this, all in all, is where you're going to get a lot of money's worth out of. The fourth slot, I recommend taking Damage Control System Modification 2. This improves, or decreases, I should say, your fire extinguishing time and your flooding recovery time by -15%, meaning you're putting those floods and fires out even more quickly. Steering gears, Modification 1, your rudder shift, is 19.1 seconds to get a full turn. So it's a bit rough, but I don't personally see the need for this. They used to, before they built in the propulsion modification into Vermont, you could get propulsion, but they took that out. And because, again, you're such a large target, you're just better off with the Damage Control System Modification 2. Airstrike Modification 1, this is only going to help you out realistically with subs, with your depth charge airstrike. I don't recommend it. You're just going to get so much use out of this module. And then for the fifth slot, I'm just going to cut to the chase. You want Concealment System Modification 1. This decreases your ship's detectability range by sea by -10%. Squadron detectability range, -10%. Dispersion of shells fired by enemies attacking your ship, +5%. And when we build fully for concealment, we're down to 12.6 kilometer by sea, 11 kilometer by air. This is really good for a battleship of this size at tier 10 to have such good concealment. So it helps too if your flank collapses and you need to run away. I've had this happen to me several times. And just having that greater concealment instead of being something like 14 or 15 kilometers has really helped save my bacon. For the sixth slot, there's a couple options here. The first, which I think most players may lean towards, is the main battery modification 3. This reduces that main battery reload time down by -12%. And it comes at the cost of your main battery traverse speed being -13%. Okay, so Vermont is known for this ridiculously long reload time on the main battery being 40 seconds. Okay, so players really, I mean, I understand why, lean towards taking this to help get your reload time down to what, like 36 seconds, something like that. Just because it is just so abysmally bad. I just decided from the get-go I didn't want to go this route, just to have, you know, a few seconds quicker reload because of the playstyle of the Vermont, which I covered in yesterday's video, and you can go check that out. I'll link it at the end of the video here, where we did really good in our second randoms battle. But I want to improve my main battery shell dispersion, so by -11%. So I'm getting more accurate salvos out of these long reloading times of the main battery. And for me, this has paid off because even though I reload in 36 seconds, roughly speaking, I'm just guessing off the top of my head, I don't always want to pull the trigger right at 36 seconds because I'm waiting for that cruiser, I'm waiting for that battleship to go broadside, and sometimes I'm holding on to my salvo at an additional 5, 10, 15 seconds, even with the 40-second reload time, just to have that opportunity of pulling the trigger. And that's difficult with Vermont as a battleship because it's a more passive play style. You know, Ohio, like with the build I have, even with accuracy, 24 seconds. You take the reload build on your motto, you're doing 26, 27 seconds, I believe it is. So it's just different. And so you really want to get as much money's worth out of your accuracy of these 12 guns. And so that is why I've gone for the artillery plotting modification. This is what I'd recommend first, but you're welcome to try both of them out. You know, I could just simply demount this or sell it and then mount on the main battery modification 3. But for myself, I've appreciated the accuracy here in this instance because I have to wait so long to begin with for these guns to reload. You also have Auxiliary Armaments Modification 2. This is going to improve your secondary battery reload time, but the main thing is your AA damage and damage from AA shell explosions, and number of explosions produced by your AA defense salvos when you have the defensive AA fire consumable activated. Your AA rating just, it goes up. Like you'd probably be breaking 93, 94 even with this, because you have really strong AA even at tier 10. You it's never going to prevent a first strike. Well, if he flies into all your flak explosions, it will. I've had that happen to me twice with Vermont so far, just because the AA defense, you can see shell explosions, and so when they fly into multiple shell explosions, 6 being produced, it's rather deadly for the enemy CV to go through, especially when you have defensive AA fire activated. So 1, 2, 3. In terms of consumable, you have your standard damage control party. We have the action time of 22 seconds, reload time of 80 seconds, and unlimited number of consumables. You have now the buffed version of Vermont that they did a while back. So the buff is our reload time is 40 seconds instead of 80 seconds, which is really sweet. We have HP per second of plus 514, which we can buff up even more with the India Delta combat signal, bringing us to 616. So I recommend running that. Consumable action time of 30.8 seconds, and I have 5 of these instead of just the 4. Now, you get access to the spotting aircraft. This I like running on Vermont. I'm trying to see over an island. I'm trying to get that CV towards the back of the map. This I lean towards more. It's an action time of 100 seconds. So 1:40 seconds essentially, but it has a very long reload time of 240 seconds, and we get 4. Alternatively, you also have the fighter. The fighter is just going to shoot down the planes in your immediate vicinity. They have a pretty limited action radius of 3 kilometers, but you already have really good AA on the Vermont, so I lean towards spotting aircraft versus fighter. Maybe if you're doing something like brawls, or maybe even ranked at tier 10, then I can see the advantage of a fighter, because they have those on smaller maps since there's less higher tiered ships. So then maybe fighter is suitable in that situation. Now you also have the defensive AA fire consumable. It improves your continuous damage by plus 50%. So our AA is 448, so plus 50% of that. So basically 224. So that is looking really good to be over 650 continuous damage. And then shell explosion damage goes up by plus 300%. So if someone wanders into your your explosion, your flak, they're going to get wrecked with their planes. Action time 40 seconds, reload time 80 seconds. 4 consumables. Otherwise, what else am I running here with signals? Generally speaking, I'm doing something like this. This is what I run combat signal wise. Now with the commander, I moved him off of my Montana. I haven't been playing Montana. I haven't played with Montana a lot, actually. I need to go back and just visit playing the ship because I have limited battles on it. But I moved the commander over just because I've been working on playing the Vermont more. Still a little bit more of maybe it's not necessarily first impressions, but I need to get more battles underneath my belt. Vermont has challenged in the sense, if your team collapses, there's little you can do because your DPM is so low. And that's you're just kind of like a thick boy who just gets pushed around at that point when your team just disappears and the enemy team pushes in on you. But in terms of the commander, I recommend running either John Doe, or there should be another one known as George Doe. That's who I originally had Vermont, but I put him off, and I'm going to move him over to Montana most likely, because he has 2 enhanced skills. The first is Gunfeeder. Wargaming has changed some things with this skill. So this is a minus 60%. So instead of having a... What is the stock even now? No, I have Halsey on him. I need to see Yamato. Okay, it's 40% stock. So you have 60% as the enhanced skill with your commander. So that's good. Originally it was like, I think 50% stock and 75% overall, if I'm not mistaken, but they changed something as of, I think, this past patch with that, but I can't remember what it was. I'm not going to go into all that. Grease the gears. This is enhanced skill, main battery traverse speed plus 25% versus just 20% stock. So I really recommend this just because it's helping us reach that 31 points, was it 3 second, 180 degree turn time. Because it's nice to be able to get these devastating guns on targets quickly. And you saw that with the destroyer in the second match yesterday. We had to get our guns turned on really quickly because he just went dark as we were firing. So if it was slower, it would have been maybe more harder to kill him as he went after he'd gone dark. So I would recommend for your first 3 points of picking up gun feeder and then grease the gears. 6 points, adrenaline rush. Let the adrenaline rush kick in to help with that reload time of your main battery, getting down to 39, 38, 37 seconds. I'm not sure what we were by the end of that second match in yesterday's video because it was hot. A lot of things happening at the end of that match. It was a really good game, even though we still lost, but it was a good game. For 10 points, what would I recommend pick up of the 3 of these first? Probably fire prevention, to be honest, because there's so much HE spam in the game. Reduces your risk of catching fire by -10% and reduces your maximum number of fires to -1. So to briefly explain that, without fire prevention, 4 fires could be set on Vermont or any ship in the game. 1 on the bow, 1 on the stern, 1 on the rear part of superstructure, 1 on the forward part of superstructure. Fire prevention takes the 2 that you'd have on your superstructure and only 1, and basically puts it in the center. So that means you're taking less damage because a lot of people are targeting this 19mm superstructure to set fires and just cause damage to you. So you're increasing your endurance by taking the fire prevention skill. After that, I would probably recommend pick up the concealment expert to get you down to that 12.6 kilometers. And then with an 18-point build, I'd recommend picking up the emergency repair expert. Damage control, party consumable action time plus 10%, repair party consumable action time plus 10%, and we get an additional repair party. So stock you would have 4. With this build, we have 5. And then the last skill of your last 3 points, being a 21-point commander, would be the basics of survivability. Module restoration time, -5%, fire extinguishing time, -15%, flooding recovery time, -15%. So this is a pretty standard all-around battleship build. This is a very common build you'll find on a lot of battleships, and maybe instead of gun feeder, you might see some preventive maintenance, something common like to German battleships. But this is a standard battleship build. Vermont has the role of playing the hunter quite well. So we want to increase our endurance and have a longer impact in the game and making a positive impact. Now, are there other things I would recommend here? Well, if you don't want to take basics of survivability, you could take the brisk skill. So because you have that good concealment already, being 12.6, I was like, what is happening? 12.6 kilometers by sea. Brisk you can get a really good use out of, meaning that you are able to, it increases your speed. I think it's like 8%, something like that. I was about to tell you before the server disconnected and my internet is still working quite fine. So I'm guessing it's just the server. But you could take brisk. That would leave you with 1 point, so you'd have a 20-point commander by then. So then what would I recommend for you to run with 1 point remaining? Well, maybe I'll tell you here in a minute if the game decides to load back in. Because I'm not sure if preventive maintenance would be necessarily the route you want to go. I mean, you'd definitely be beefing up the survivability of your main battery guns. Less likely to become incapacitated, but we'll see. It keeps spamming me out. I keep thinking it's going to come back on. Okay, apparently we've lost it. So I'll just put a picture here at the end of what I'd recommend for a 21-point commander if you went with brisk. and then there'll just be an end clip of just seeing Vermont sitting in port. So hope you appreciate this video. If you have questions about the build I'm running or a skill I didn't cover, let me know in the comments. So if you liked today's video, give a thumbs up. If you did not, give a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And we'll catch you next time. Take care.